Coach Rob here. Just a quick one before we get started on today's episode. We've got a special offer on coaching running through the end of September 2024. We have £200 off the cost of an annual coaching package, taking the price from £1,797 down to £1,597. It's a limited number of slots we've got available at this, and it's only available to the end of September. So if you're looking for coaching going forwards into the new season, please get in touch. We've got a link in the show notes down below. You can book a call, have a chat with me or the team, and we'll see whether you're a good fit for coaching with Team Oxygenaddict. Great to be joined by you again, Emma. We've had you on twice before. We've heard your story about Ironman St. George World Championships and Ironman Kona, the two big races that you've done. So it's great to get you back on and hear about how your 2023 has been. And firstly, to say congratulations on the age group win at Ironman Wales a few weeks ago. You said before, it feels like a long time ago, but actually it's only 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I think, as we're recording. So yeah. So how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it does feel like a long time ago, because I think when we did Ironman Wales, we had perfect conditions and it felt like summer, and suddenly it's a bit like winter today. It's not quite the same. It does feel like we've changed seasons since I did that race. Yeah.
A lot has changed in the past couple of weeks, hasn't it? And it was interesting. I was looking at the diary and thinking, well, it was 3rd of September this year. Next year, I believe it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks later.
22nd of September. I might be wrong. It's 3 weeks later, which, will be interesting.
It's always a weather lottery in the UK, isn't it? But it was great that this year I was watching along with the video broadcast, and it looked like you had as close to perfect conditions as you could get, maybe too warm even for some people.
Yeah, I'll take the warmth over the cold any day, though. So for me personally, it was absolutely perfect conditions. I asked for anything better than that, to be honest. Yeah. Well,
let's start by that. Let's start by talking about your race and how it went. Because for people who haven't been to Ironman Wales at Tenby, I honestly believe it is possibly the best location for an Ironman in the world. It's not a fast bike course, but in terms of just being blown away by how the place looks, it's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the start line, the amphitheatre where everyone's watching from the cliffs, and the swim out around the rock and the whole deal, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'll do it justice, if I'm honest, but it is one of those starts. I don't think I've experienced a start like that, in all honesty. And I have done Kona, and without taking anything away from Kona, because that is amazing. I think this was more special because it was in the UK. And I think, being on home turf is always quite special. But just the crowds in Tenby, when I went down to T1 to start with, at 5:00 in the morning, there was hundreds of people already lining the route with the dogs and the small children. And, I was just like, wow, why is everyone here already? So the atmosphere, even before, when it was pitch black, was just absolute. It was building. It was amazing. And then, lining up on the beach, having gone down the pink zigzag path, with our pink plastic bags and putting those on the pegs. You had the fireworks, you had skydivers, the sky was all painted red and stuff. And, you had the anthem being sung, and it was just, the atmosphere was incredible. I think because it does feel like an amphitheatre, like you say. I've not experienced something like that before, and it really did send a shiver down your spine. And I absolutely loved it. I was really buzzing before we started. Normally I'm a bag of nerves. For this one, I think everyone I was with was just grinning, like, massive smiles, and just really excited to be there.
Yeah. It really does feel as though the town really embraces the event, and it isn't an inconvenience like I felt in some places. It's like all the locals get up really early. It's like a festival day there, isn't it?
Yeah. So from the minute we arrived in our hotel, the hotel staff were all excited for us. Every time we went out in Tenby, all the shop, everyone in the shops, in the cafes, everyone was just, oh, you're here to do the Ironman. It was incredible. It just felt like everybody in the whole place was with you for that event. It was amazing. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
So for the people who've not been there, the thing that's different about Tenby is the town is essentially on the cliff tops, and it's probably, I don't know how high you would say, 50 meters or maybe 100 meters high, and you've got like zigzag paths. So after you finish the swim, can have to run up these zigzag paths, and
Yes.
it's a fair way to T1, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it about a kilometre?
It's a kilometre. Yeah. So you hear about the pink bags. I didn't really know much about these pink bags. But basically, in addition to your normal transition bag, you're given a pink plastic bag, which is where you put your trainers in. And the idea is that when you come off the beach, you put trainers on to run through the town, because it is a kilometre run on just the streets. And obviously you don't really want to do that in bare feet.
No.
So that's quite surreal, because some people take the wetsuits off. I kept mine on because I was really cold, but you're then running in trainers and a wetsuit. You've got up a steep zigzaggy path, which is probably only about 50 meters, but it is quite steep, and it's not easy. It's quite a tough one to get up.
Yeah.
And then you just run through the town, and there's loads of crowds out, but we all look really stupid because you're in wetsuits and carrying this pink shopping bag, and you're wearing your trainers. So it's not how you would normally go out for a run, I would suggest. Yeah. But personally, I quite liked it because I kept my wetsuit fully zipped until the last few minutes, and that really warmed me up, because I was cold after the swim.
Okay.
And actually, everyone else was unzipping, but I kept mine zipped up until quite near transition, because I was enjoying actually getting quite warm in my wetsuit. And once I got warm, I could unzip it. And I always get my wetsuit off quite quick anyway, so I wasn't bothered about losing time taking it off. But it was actually quite nice keeping the warmth as we're running. Yeah, but quite a surreal experience, I have to admit, and very different to any of the Ironman or the triathlon. Well, yeah.
So the swim itself, then let's talk through that. It's a 2-lap swim.
Yeah.
And it's interesting mainly because of the swim around the rock at one end, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you start on the beach and you swim out past the rock in a sort of triangle, and then come back, and it's an Aussie exit. So you run back onto the beach and do a bit on the beach, and then go back and do it all again. And the beach, obviously it's tidal. So when you first go down past it at 5 o'clock, some of the boys are actually just on the sand. And I was like, oh, that might be interesting if we're running around those, not swimming. But actually, by the time we started, obviously the tide had come in and you were swimming, not running around the boys. But it's there is a current. I couldn't tell you which way the current was going because I didn't really look at my watch. I did wear my watch, but I don't really look at it. I just look at it to sort of try and work out, am I nearly there sort of things. But
yeah,
could see quite well. I barely looked at my watch, but I think a lot of people were saying the current did affect your time more on the second lap. I didn't particularly notice it, to be honest, but it probably did, and I just wasn't that aware of my times, to be honest. But the swim was good. I was really surprised at how fast people ran into the water. It was like a sprint start. I was already.
People do get excited, don't they?
Yeah, I was all for pottering down, and then I was like, oh, everyone's really sprinting. So yeah, I decided I better run. Yeah.
So I think people were relatively lucky this year. The state of the water was only a lot calmer than it's been in previous years. What tips would you have for people doing the swim? Did anything stick out in your head that you would do the same next year or that you would do differently?
You are right. The water was very calm. As I said, I didn't particularly feel the current, and it was a bit wavy, but nothing like what you would expect in a sea. So it was almost like a lake swim, if I'm honest, but it wasn't a lake, but it wasn't as bad as you might have thought for some sea swims that you hear about. Personally, my problem is I get very cold in the water, and before that I'd had a few swims up in York, and the temperature of the water was about 16 degrees, and I get Raynaud's in my fingers. I can't move my fingers if I get too cold. So I was quite nervous about the swim because I knew it was only about 17 degrees, which is just on the edge of being a bit too cold for me. So I'd bought a thermal wetsuit for this swim, as opposed to just my normal wetsuit. And the actual water temperature was 18.3, which was just legal to wear swim boots. So it was 18.3 or below for swim boot. Then they announced it as 18.3. So I actually wore my swim boots as well. And I had a neoprene hat on. And as I was lining up, quite a lot of people were saying, oh, I wish I'd brought my neoprene hat with me as well. Because it was cold. I think most people were okay with it. But for those of us who suffer in the cold, it was cold. I was shivering by the end of it, definitely.
Yeah.
But because I had all the thermal stuff, I was actually okay. And that was my big fear, because I've had other experiences. I've not coped with the water temperature that well. Yeah. But as a swim, I actually thought it was good. It was busy when we turned, but not like other events. Because everyone was more spread out. It didn't feel like the usual sort of washing machine on some of the corners. You had a bit more space this time. Yeah.
Okay, well that's a good tip, I think, for people going to Wales, because it is a little bit later in the year, and I think it's worth remembering that it can feel quite chilly at 5 o'clock in the morning
Yes.
before the sun
Yes.
rises and when the sun's not on you, and
Yes.
that can have a big effect on how you feel in the water if
Yeah.
you've got a bit cold. Even sometimes we advise athletes to wear old woolly socks
Yeah.
waiting around on the beach, because keeping your feet warm can make a difference. So having swim socks on is great.
Yeah.
It's great when we can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then you warmed up on the run to T1.
Yeah. I lost a bit of time in my transition taking my boots off, but I'll take that, because I came out the water shivering, but actually feeling okay, which for me is massive. Makes a huge difference. So I'll take the few seconds getting my boots off to get that extra warmth in my body. But yeah, you get nice and warm running through transition. So that was good. And then transition was fine. Transition is in the same place. T1 and T2 is all one place. So actually it's a lot easier logistics wise, and just knowing where all your stuff is as well. So that was really smooth. It's brilliantly organized. No real issues in transition, just straight through. Yeah, I'm not a quick person in transition. But it is what it is. And, I came out with everything in the right place. So, getting onto the bike felt good. Yeah.
Well, great. That leads us on to the bike course then at Ironman Wales. Describe for people who've never been to Ironman Wales what the situation is there with the number of loops that you had, the road surfaces, the conditions, the scenery. Talk people through how the bike course is at Ironman Wales.
Yeah, it's sort of 3 loops. The first loop you go out towards the coast, and it's undulating. There's some little hills. There's a little spicy hill as you come back off the beach, but there's nothing. I would say there's nothing really bad, but it is quite undulating, and there's some bits where you're in a bit of on a narrow road where you can't overtake. So you just have to pace it a bit better on those bits. But it's a really nice cycle out to the coast, and incredible scenery. I mean, the whole route was incredible scenery, if I'm totally honest. But the first loop is this out to the beach and then sort of back into Tenby. And then you have 2, they're about 40k loops where it's hillier, for want of a better phrase. And it is hilly. But I'd say that where this is nice is that the road conditions are really good. I thought the road conditions were very good on this course. I've done Bolton previously, and I think the road surface there isn't that good, but in Tenby and the surrounding areas, it was very good. And I think there's a warning about a sandy road near the beach on the first loop. That was fine. It wasn't. I was expecting sort of sand dunes on the road or something, but actually it was fine. It was perfectly manageable. So I think condition wise, the road surfaces are very good. So whilst it is hilly, you can sort of cycle the hills properly without worrying too much about potholes and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that's famous for at Ironman Wales on the bike course is, of course, Saunders Foothill and the crowds you get there. What was your experience like of being an athlete?
That is amazing. I have to admit, before you do that, you do this little Wiseman's Hill. You come off Wiseman's Bridge and do a hill, which is really steep actually. And I hadn't reckoned the course. I have no idea what to expect, other than I knew it was going to be really hilly. And that was a bit similar, because there was at the first lap for that one, there's loads of people on there. And at first I thought, oh, is this Heartbreak Hill or something? And then I was like, and then everyone was like, no, it's further along. So that's a nice little taster, I think, of what's to come. But going up the hill was just incredible. And it was a bit like the Tour de France. It was like everybody was crowding around you, and you just can't stop smiling and laughing with everybody, because it was just incredible, amazing experience. And I think you can tell now I'm still smiling when I remember it. And at second lap, crowds calmed down a little bit, not quite as busy on the second lap, but still incredible. And just the noise as you were cycling up, you couldn't hear a thing other than just the noise and the cowbells and music and everything that was going on around you. Yeah, you almost, despite the fact it was really steep, you almost didn't want it to end. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, you can't say fairer than that, can you? If the hill's really steep, but you want it to keep going because the
Yeah.
crowds are great.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
It does feel as though it's got that kind of reputation, almost like the Solberg Hill at Challenge Roth
Yes.
has got, where
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
flock there to spectate, and it's become
Yeah.
the Tour de France of the area on
Yeah.
the day it
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. I've not done Roth yet. But yeah, I think from what I've heard, I think it sounds like it's very similar, and yeah, it was incredible experience. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, what advice would you give to people? Obviously, the hilly, relentless, rolling
Mm.
nature of that course makes heart rate, even power, very difficult to use as a metric and a guide.
Um,
So how did you deal with that on race day?
um, but if I'm honest, I cycled a lot by feel. I'd
Yeah,
done a lot of hill work leading up to this. And I sort of, I know what I can do on the hills. Hill courses actually suit me better than the flat, I think. Um, and I struggle a bit with power on the hills because I know it's sort of, you have to even it out over the course of the whole thing. And I struggle with that because at times I think, oh, I'm pushing it too hard. And then you got a downhill when you know, you're not. And so in my head, I was like, I've just got to stick to about 150 on average. So I was just sort of glancing at what I was doing without paying too much attention because it was also it was once we'd warmed up, once it got to about 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:30, it actually was really hot as well. So that wasn't quite what I was expected at that time of year, if I'm honest. So I just tried to stick to how I felt because I knew all the training I'd done leading up to this, that I know my body, I knew I'd be able to read what my body was telling me. And in my head, I was just like, try and get to an average of about 150.
yeah,
It's really hard when you're doing those sorts of hills and, but I think for me, I pushed it quite a bit on the first lap of the hills. Um, and then the second lap, I did ease off a bit because I just thought, don't be that person who does a brilliant bike ride and then a rubbish run. And I knew the run was going to be tough with all the hills on the run. So I just eased it off a bit on the second lap just because I just wanted to protect my legs. And I knew I'm someone who gets quite lifted by the crowd. So I knew going up the hills, I feed off the crowds, and I thought, don't take too much out of you by getting overly excited on the hills just because of the crowd support. So
yeah.
I did sort of cycle within myself a lot more on the second lap just to try and protect the run as much as anything. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really good advice for someone lining up to do Ironman Wales, in that
Yeah.
you have to do the training on similar kind of terrain that you're going to
Yeah.
face. It has to be relentlessly hilly. And then you have to, we always sort of say, don't we, there's an art to heart rate and power as much as there's a
Yeah.
science to
Yeah.
it. And you need to learn what you can do over 6 hours plus, how it
Yeah.
feels in a 2 to 5 minute burst, and how that
Yeah.
affects you three
Yeah.
hours later. And it
Yeah.
sounds like you
Yeah.
did a really good
Yeah.
job of that.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, this in preparation for this, we'd had a family holiday in Lanzarote in summer, which for me was a bit of a self-imposed training camp. So, where we live in York, we have to cycle about an hour to get to any decent hills. So it's hard to get a good 6 hour ride of hills in. So when we went to Lanzarote, I took my tri bike with me. And we've got 3 teenage boys who don't get up until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So actually, I can go out and do my stuff and they don't even know I've done it half the time. But I used that holiday to do a lot of hill cycling. And, you know, as anyone who's cycled in Lanzarote knows, it's really windy over there as well. And actually, we had a few days of really bad wind when we were there. So that was all really good training because actually the hills are bad enough. But when you're going downhill there, if you got the wind into you, it's like going uphill as well. So for me, that was made a huge difference because I really got a lot of hill work into my legs, which gave me that sort of, I call it muscle memory, but you know, that sort of ability to know how to cycle the hills and not be afraid of the hills when I went to Wales. Yeah, and it, you know, just helps because where I live and with work and everything, can't get out to the hills as easily as I would want to. So yeah, that sort of gave me that sort of that power in my legs that I knew I could rely on when I had to in Ironman Wales.
And how far out from Ironman Wales did you do that sort of training camp holiday?
I think it was about 5 weeks. I
Yeah.
think I came back and I had 5 weeks before Ironman Wales or something like that. Or 4 weeks. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Yeah, 5 weeks. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, I guess for people listening, it's close enough that you'll have the physical benefits and you'll have the memory of having done it still.
Yeah.
But you can also lose the fatigue of the training camp, and you can be fresh enough for race day.
Yes.
That's, I think that's an inevitability. We often get this question from athletes, which is, I've entered Ironman Wales, or I've entered Ironman Lanzarote, and I live somewhere flat. What do I do? How can I simulate? Or in extreme cases, I've entered an event in the Alps and I live somewhere flat. What can I do? And I think in an ideal world, people will hear this and go, oh, before I enter that event, I should consider how I would train for that event and make a plan for it. Because it's got to be training camps or mini trips to the similar kind of terrain you're going to race over.
But I mean, to be honest, I was lucky. It worked with summer holidays for the kids. I'd have still done it without that. I probably just wouldn't have done as well. I'd have found it much harder work. So I guess it's that balance, isn't it? It's what's possible in leading up to these things, and it's not always possible to do that preparation. I was going for my age group win, so for me it was all about I knew I needed to get the hills into my legs, and I had that opportunity. So it's not everyone's idea of a summer holiday.
Do you know what though? The crossover of the Venn diagram of people who that is their idea of a summer holiday and listens to this podcast is probably like two circles on top of each other.
I know. Yeah.
Right. So I liked you'd used Coach Chris's patented "protect the run" idea as a mantra during the bike ride.
Definitely.
That brings you back down into. There's a nice whizzy hill back down into Tenby as a treat for the end of it. And how did you feel heading out onto the run?
I felt good actually. I actually I felt the best I've ever felt coming off the bike, and coming off getting onto the run. I did have that initial tiredness. You always have that initial first kilometre when your legs feel tired, but I knew actually my legs felt good. I knew I'd done the bike justice. I'd cycled it within myself, and so I think I felt like I'd protected the run. I didn't come out thinking I'm really tired. I finished Bolton before and thought, I am so tired. I don't think I can run a marathon. But this time I had none of that. I actually thought, oh, I feel all right now. And, I didn't have that feeling coming up the bike of thinking, thank goodness that's over. I was actually, that was all right, and I could carry on if I needed to. So, so I think I paced it well. I have a legal question. Could I have gone a bit harder? But actually, I think in a way that's probably good. And I think Chris has said to me before, if you come off the bike feeling that way, you probably have paced it about right. So, probably was about spot on for me, because I did feel strong on the run. Yeah.
I think that's the marker, isn't it? If you finish the whole event afterwards thinking, could I have gone harder on the bike? Maybe I could, and you've had a good run. Then I think if you kind of like leave something in the savings account for the run, and you can squeeze all that out onto the run. Even if you had gone 5 minutes faster on the bike, you probably would have gone a little bit slower on the run, and it evens itself out. It
balances out, doesn't it? Yeah.
All right. So the run course at Ironman Wales then, for people who've never been, or even for people who have been, describe this because it's amazing.
Yeah. It's 4 laps and it's through Tenby. And so it is just like you are just surrounded by crowds virtually the whole route, and crowds that are just going crazy the whole time. I mean, their enthusiasm is incredible. How some of them kept going with that level of noise for that whole day is unbelievable. But you are lifted by the crowds. And I remember when we arrived at our hotel, the receptionist said, if you ever feel tired on the run, you will just be lifted by the crowd and they'll keep you going. And she was absolutely spot on. They just kept you going the whole way around. It was amazing. There was no bits where you felt on your own or that you weren't being supported by somebody. So it's a 4-lap course and it's very hilly. That's all I would say, and twisty. So you basically, to describe it simply, you basically run up for 2 miles, do 2 little turnarounds where you get your lap band. And then you basically come back down for 2 miles into the centre of Tenby and then do a sort of 2-mile route through Tenby, which is quite twisty and turny and up and down again. And then you head out and do it all again. But it's a great course. It's really tough, but I'd not trained for a hilly course, I have to admit, because most of my running's on the flat. But actually, in my head, I actually quite like that course, because I think for me, it was just like, get up the hill, get some fluid at the top of the hill, and then, you can stretch your legs out a bit more on the downhill. And then the crowds actually through the main bit of Tenby were incredible. So you're sort of just flying through that, because you're so lifted by all the people, and the kids all wanting to high five you, and the little power up boards that they have all over the place. So yeah, it was, for me, it was like, just do the effort to get up the hill, and then the rest of it, you just enjoy.
I love the part of Tenby, how the course kind of winds back on itself and in and out of the little streets. And for anyone who's not been, it's got a feel of, it's almost like a bit like York's Shambles, isn't it? Or a bit like the Bygone Alley in Harry Potter, really narrow cobbled streets.
Yeah.
And spectators can move across between the roads and see their athletes loads of times. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. My husband was watching me, and he kept popping up at different places. So I never quite knew where he was going to be next. But you're right, it is really narrow streets and cobble streets, and you sort of lose a bit of sense of direction at times. And also because there are two beaches, so you sort of, when I first tried to work out where we were running, I got totally confused around the little streets. But once you're running it, it makes sense. But it's quite an unusual course, I would say, but really good fun to run it. Really good fun. Yeah.
Right, now, you mentioned earlier on your aim was to win the age group.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the racing. How aware were you at the time of where your competitors were, if at all?
Very aware. Luella, the woman who came second to me, incredible athlete. I've been inspired for her for years. And she always beats me by a country mile, if I'm totally honest. She's just incredible. She's a bit like a machine on the bike and the run, and I have so much respect for her. And she beat me in Bolton in 2019. And I was just absolutely amazed at how fast she could go. And she's just an amazing triathlete. Huge respect for her. So I'd seen her on the bike course a couple of times. She overtook me on the second lap like a bullet. And I just thought, oh, fair enough. She's faster on me on the bike. And so I'd seen her coming on the run when I came in on the bike. So I knew exactly where she was. She knew exactly where I was. But she's she's a really, really consistent runner. So I knew I just had to try and do my thing and see what happened. Yeah. And in a way, it's worse knowing what you're up against, because you know how good they are. And I think for the whole time I was gaining on her. But it was really close. And going into the fourth lap, I think she'd started behind me. So I thought I had about a 6-minute lead going into the fourth lap, but it was actually only 90 seconds because of the times. Yeah, so my husband shouted at me, "You've only got a 90-second lead." She was a little bit annoying because I'd been planning some extra walks on the fourth lap because the hills were taking their toll at that point. But so yeah, the fourth lap was quite hard because I know how good she is. And I knew I'd just have to, there was no margin to sort of relax at all on that last lap. So yeah. So,
wow.
It was good. And, I think the margin was 4 minutes in the end, which is really close, over that sort of distance. It's incredibly close. And I think so the third place athlete was another 2 hours. So I think that shows sort of what a battle we'd had. And, but, without her, I'd probably been a lot slower, in all honesty, because I had that incentive to really push it on the run. But huge respect for her as an athlete, because, I've admired her from afar for years and years and years. So yeah.
Great to have someone to push you and have that battle with, I suppose.
Yeah.
And nice to come out on top this time.
Yeah. And actually that was quite special, because, as you know, when I finished Bolton last year, I didn't know I'd won my age group. So I finished feeling a little bit like, oh, I know I've done quite well, but I've still not won my age group. And it's only when you told me at the finish afterwards that I realised. Whereas actually this time, I knew just towards the end, someone had shouted at me from the crowd actually, and then my husband had shouted at me as well later on. So I knew I had it in the bag just as we were finishing. So actually running down the red carpet knowing I had the age group win was really special. I mean, it would be really special anyway, to be honest, because it's such an incredible finish. But knowing that for the first, that's the first time I finished an event, knowing I actually had the age group win was really special. Really special. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, congratulations. That's
Thank
brilliant.
you.
Love it. And well deserved after all your hard work.
Yeah, I knew what I had to do. And I when I saw Luella's name on the start list, I knew what would be needed. And I had a good idea of what I'd have to do. I didn't particularly think I'd win it, but I knew, my aim was to just be as close to her as possible, and try and close that margin that she always has over me, So yeah, yeah, it's just one of those,
Brilliant.
I'm sure there'll be lots of other events where she's miles ahead of me again, but yeah, for that one, it worked well for me on that day. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So did you take your slot for Nice?
No, we had to leave quite early the next morning to get home for work and kids going back to school and stuff. So I was gutted. I couldn't go to the award ceremony, really disappointed, but it's, we have jobs. That's what pays for these events. And and we had, we'd left the kids. So we had to get back and get them sorted and ready for school. So no, a bit really upset about that, but it is just one of those things, isn't it? It just doesn't always work out. I'm grateful to have managed to squeeze that one in this year. So yeah. But one of our fellow athletes picked up my award for me and posted it on afterwards, David Brown, which I'm really grateful for because that means an awful lot to me to have that on my mantelpiece to look at. So, so that was really nice. Very grateful to him for that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned there, sometimes things are not going to plan. We had a chat in the pre-interview here, and I genuinely meant what I said. I think a lot of athletes assume they hear the story of someone winning or doing very well, and they assume everything goes right all the time. And I know I used to assume this when I was racing. All my competitors are just having an easy life, and it's only me that's in the shed at 9:00 on a Sunday evening or whatever. You race at Ironman Frankfurt earlier this year. It was one of those that didn't quite go the way you'd hoped it to. So let's talk a little bit about that. What was your experience there?
Yeah, I entered Ironman Frankfurt just to do one early in the season to just get that feeling of doing an Ironman again and reminding myself how hard it was, I think. And training had gone really well. I'd done everything I should have done. It's a lake swim. It's a fairly flat bike course. It's undulating, but there's no killer hills. It's relatively straightforward, and the run is reasonably flat. It's around a river, and you go up and across the river over bridges, but there's nothing in it that's really challenging, not like Wales. And I'd prepared for it. I'd done all the preparation. I was feeling good. Got there. Lots of little things didn't go quite right before it. Lots of stressful situations at the airport, not being allowed to put our bikes on the plane because they'd switched to a smaller plane, and having to stand at the check-in for over an hour talking to lots of airport people until they agreed they might be able to squeeze my bike on the plane. And lots of things didn't go quite right before it, but nothing major. But on the day I didn't feel quite right. I just felt a bit off. I hadn't, my toilet visits weren't quite right. My stomach didn't feel quite right. I just assumed it was just nerves, and then the swim went really well. The bike, I thought, went okay. I felt quite sick on the bike, and I struggled to get my food into me. But I thought I did okay on the bike, although I did find it quite hard work, given it was a relatively flat course. And then on the run, I set off running, and I felt okay, but I didn't feel 100%. My gels weren't sitting with me at all very well. And then at about 16 kilometers, I was violently sick and continued to be like that for the rest of the run course. So I think for about the last 24 kilometers or something, every time I had water or anything, I just brought it straight back up again. So not a good experience, and not particularly enjoyable end to an event. And I did finish it, and I wasn't that bad. I still ran a 4:04 marathon, which I know is not bad.
I was going to say is a great run considering you were constantly being sick for the last.
I know, but it's not the state I'd want to be in doing a thing like that, because I really was in a bad state, and at the end of it, I was in a lot of trouble when I finished it, is all I'd probably say. So it took an awful lot out of me, did that one, and I just didn't enjoy crossing the line. I felt so ill doing it. So so I'm still not quite sure what caused that, whether it was too many gels or something in the water, whether I had some sort of stomach bug that had gone with, from the UK. I still don't really know what caused
it. It does sound like some kind of illness that was building with you.
Maybe
you not being quite right the day before the race. It's so hard when it happens right on race day and you've travelled out and you're out there and
So no, I did have a few. I did look at sort of what I'd eaten and drunk on the day and try and work out, have I done something wrong or different? And still not really sure, to be honest. But the difference for Wales is that I actually avoided gels until the run, because gels do give me stomach issues normally. So I tend to leave them for the run anyway. In fact, I'd taken quite a few before the run. I'm still not sure that was what caused the issues, but I thought I'm not risking it for Wales. So but no, that one, Frankfurt I'm glad I've done it and I'm glad I've finished it. And actually it was an amazing event. So, I would recommend it if anyone wants to do it. It's a great course and it's really well supported. It just didn't happen for me that day. It was really, really tough experience. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you took that on the chin and you accepted I was probably ill.
Yeah.
I still had an amazing time. The race didn't go the way I hoped it would, but I think you learn a lot about yourself in those type of events where things do go terribly wrong, whether you're the kind of person who folds or whether you go, I'm just going to grind this out. And it sounds like you're very much in the second category.
Yeah. I think for me, it was just, you can walk it, you can get through it, just finish it. And for me, it was more about what caused it. Is it that I just had a funny stomach bug, or was there something with what I'd eat, my preparation, more in terms of was I dehydrated before it and stuff like that. So again, I've not really been able to pinpoint it, but it did make me think a lot more for Wales on how I prepare for that. Certainly with the fluid and the food intake on the course, and just making sure practiced in the lead up to that one. Yeah.
Well, at least you got the end of season result that you wanted with the race at Wales. That's the best way to end it, with an age group win, isn't it?
I know. Yeah. No, it's good. Yeah.
So last question then. What's next for you? What are you looking for heading into the next season?
If I'm honest, I'm not sure. There's a few Ironman. I would have liked to have taken a spot at Nice. I would quite like to do that. I did that as the half distance world champs a few years ago, and it was a fantastic venue for the half. And having watched the men's this year, I would quite like to do that. So whether there's an opportunity to try and grab another spot, I'm not sure. I'll see. I haven't got anything planned for yet. It's just not because I don't want to do so. I've just not got. We've got kids with GCSEs and stuff coming up, so we're in that cycle of important kids exams at the moment. So it's trying to work it all around that at the moment. But I will try and get in Roth again. That's something I've been trying to get into the last few years. And then Ironman Lanzarote is the one that I still really want to do. But I need to be able to do a training week for that before I go off and do it. So that might be a few years away. Yeah.
I love how that hasn't put you off. You spent time describing how even in Lanzarote, when you're going downhill, if you're into the wind, you have to pedal, and then you go, but I still want to do the race. I get that. It's an amazing island, isn't it, Lanzarote? It's like it's made for an Ironman. The one lap around the island thing is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think I've cycled most of the Ironman course now, so I know how tough it is. But I also I just really like it as a course. It's just so unique in terms of the scenery and the hills, and it's that one, isn't it? It's like, everyone says, "Oh, have you done Lanzarote?" For me, it's that I just really would like to do Lanzarote at some point. So we'll see.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that'll be the next year or a few more years. So maybe when the kids have left home, we'll do that one. Yeah,
it has got that cachet of a long-standing. I think it's been going 30 odd years at this point, hasn't it? And when I was getting into the sport in the early 2000s, the local athletes would describe it with a reverence of almost like the Kona of Europe. We're going to this island and we're just praying that the weather's going to be kind to us and that we don't get punished too much. So I can see why an athlete like you would be drawn to that.
Yeah. So maybe one day, but I'll see. Yeah, not got a plan for next year at the moment, but definitely try and do an Ironman of some sort next year. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, listen, thank you very much for taking the time to come and join us. It's been great. I loved hearing the story, and congratulations on the win for Ironman Wales.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the end of this week's episode. Before we finish, here are some discount codes and deals for you. If you're looking for coaching for the end of the season and into 2025 and beyond, over at teamoxygenaddict.com, I think we've got the most comprehensive triathlon coaching program for busy age groupers. And through the end of September 2024, we're running a special discount of £200 off an annual coaching package, taking the price from $17.97 down to $15.97 for 12 months worth of coaching. If you're looking for high quality proven coaching for Ironman 70.3, I honestly don't think that you're going to find a better solution for busy age groupers. If you're interested, there's a link in the show notes. You can book a membership call with me or a member of our team. We can have a good chat through whether you'd be a good fit for Team Oxygen Addict and our coaching, and see how we can best help you out. And remember, that £200 discount only applies to annual memberships, and it's limited to the end of September 2024. So please get in quickly. If you're listening to a historical episode, then you'll have missed this discount, unfortunately, but please feel free to get in touch anyway, and we'll see what we can do to help you out. Also, remember, you can go over to precisionfuelandhydration.com and use the code OXYGEN24 for 15% off your first electrolyte order. You can use their free fuel and hydration planning tool to receive a personalized strategy for your next race. It'll help you understand your own carbohydrate, electrolyte, and fluid needs so you can refine your strategy during training. And don't forget, there's also the availability of a free one-to-one video consultation with their athlete support team, and they'll be happy to help you nail your nutrition plan and help you perform at your best on race day. So remember, there's links in the show notes so you don't have to remember them. And if you're after £200 off your coaching, you can get a massive deal by booking in before the end of September 2024. Until next week, have a great, safe training and racing week. I'm Coach Rob Wilby, and you've been listening to the Oxygen Addict podcast.